Hey everybody, today I have another tier list. I finished doing all of the classes and the heroes in the classes and just all the heroes against one another. But there's another part to the different characters in the game that I think is pretty relevant and can definitely have some very noticeable impact on your entire run over the course of you playing it out. And if you read the title, then you know what I'm about to talk about. It's the facility traits. There's a lot of heroes in this game that get traits that provide some sort of bonus when you assign them to basically be in charge of one of the different facilities in Camelot, whether it's the Round Table, Hospice, Cathedral, Merchant, Training Grounds, or the Enchanted Tower. And some of these heroes have absolutely phenomenal effects that can provide very noticeable advantages over the course of your entire campaign, from fight to fight, and some of them don't even apply bonuses to fights, but just help on a more meta sense, with being able to buy things or sell things, stuff like that. Meanwhile, some other heroes, not so much. You'd probably want to keep them away from those spots. So I thought it may be fun and kind of helpful to go over all of the heroes with one of these traits and give them a tier, and maybe this will help some players out there struggling with what spot should be assigned to which hero, and maybe you'll learn about some of these traits that you didn't know some of these heroes have, so it'll give you something to look forward to on another run. So as for what each tier means, basically at the top, S tier, this is going to be one of the best traits in the entire game. This is definitely a hero you're going to be assigning to that facility pretty much every single time you get the opportunity to, without really any sort of debate about it. A tier is just a very strong trait, and you're probably going to be using this in most cases. There may be certain situations where you may opt for something different, but this will definitely be the majority of the time this hero will be used for that facility, and maybe it's just not quite as strong as some of the traits in S tier. B tier is just sort of your very average traits. This is, decent, but usually you may be just using this temporarily, or it's just the best you have available because the alignment you're running doesn't give you access to any heroes with something better. C tier, these traits aren't necessarily that good. They're not terrible, but they're always going to be temporary. You're only putting this in and you will replace it with someone better later on, or this is just absolutely the only option you have, and even then, it's not super impactful. Sure, it's something, but even then, not much of anything. And then finally, in D tier, these traits are just terrible. You're never going to use them. And even if you do use them, they essentially make no difference. Unfortunately, there are a few traits that are that bad. I tried to take into account, which traits are applicable at certain facilities. So all the traits that are round table ones are going to be weighted more against one another rather than the entire collective, but there will definitely still be some discrepancies between what is in S tier and what isn't. It will kind of make sense as I go through this, I hope. And yeah, let's just get into it. Kicking off the tier list, we have the Black Knight, and he has the Despot trait. This is a round table trait, and it provides up to +3 loyalty for Tyrant heroes. You gain +1 for every 10 levels. And this one isn't bad. Having extra loyalty can definitely be useful, especially sort of in the mid-game, where this +1 or +2 from his trait can make the difference and get you into that next bracket of loyalty, so you get the extra 10% or that extra +1 AP. And that can definitely help boost your performance in combat, and is definitely useful, but generally not one you're going to keep around super long, because as you get later into the game, your loyalty is going to be capping out a lot easier, so you're going to be moving to something else if you have it available. So I think he's going to go into B tier. This is really where a lot of the loyalty-related stuff is going to go for essentially the same reason. Next is Sir Bors. He has the Tradesman trait, and he gains this when assigned to the Merchant. When assigned to the Merchant, he provides an extra +3 items offered from the store available for you to buy. It scales up every 10 levels. This isn't generally something you're going to be using a lot in the early game. You're not going to have a whole lot of gold a lot of the time to just be shopping, freely. But as you get to the later stages of the game, and you have a lot more gold just floating around, you do a lot more shopping. So having a larger selection can be helpful for potentially getting you that extra item you need to help flesh out your build quicker. This is sort of the reverse of the Black Knight, where it's something you may be using earlier. This one is something you're maybe using later, and he's definitely not a bad pick if you don't have one of the, in my opinion, better choices for the merchant, which we'll be covering later. So he also goes into B. Now we have Sir Brunor, and he has the Tax Collector trait, also for the Round Table, and I think this is overall probably the best trait for the Round Table. He provides up to plus 250 gold after each mission. The scaling is 10 gold per level, and this is great. Really helps inject extra gold into your coffers, allowing you to buy extra potions if you find yourself burning through them a lot more, or just gear in general, maybe get through some facility upgrades a bit faster to level up your buildings more. It's just really, really good. And like I mentioned, you're going to be using it most of the time. I can see cases where you may swap in one of the heroes that provides loyalty because you may have one or two heroes in your main party that could get that bump, and then in that case would be more useful. I don't really think it's quite on the same level as the S tier, so I think he's a prime A tier candidate. Now we have Lady Dindraine. She has the Potion Brewer trait, which applies to the Hospice. This provides up to plus 50% healing for healing potions. The scaling is 2% per level. And this is great. This can be a huge deal for your in-combat healing. Especially on higher difficulties, you find yourself using potions a lot more frequently. So an extra 50% later on in the game, and just even, 2, 10, 12, 18%, whatever, just at the lower levels, can definitely make a difference. I don't think it's the best option for the Hospice, but certainly a strong one. And maybe this would be A tier for someone else, but for me, I put it in B tier just because I don't think it's quite as strong as some of the other options. Now we have Ector. Ector, who is probably the most famous character amongst the roster for being a bench hero. He is the one hero with 95% plus of players I talk to. He is on everyone's roster, even if they don't use him in missions, because of his trait. He's the perfect bench hero. His trait is Artificer, as I'm sure everyone is aware. When you put him in the Enchanted Tower, he generates up to 250 Relic Dust after each mission. The scaling is 10 per level, and Relic Dust is super, super important. This is by far the most consistent stream of relic dust you'll have in the game, instead of having to rely on, finding chests for it or having to disenchant your own relics. And the Enchanted Tower is just the shop that offers you relics, which are extremely powerful pieces of gear and can definitely make huge differences in your hero's performance. Over the course of your entire run, you will definitely find yourself being able to buy a fair amount more relics than you would if you weren't using him. He is pretty much always in the tower, surprising no one. The epitome of an S tier trait. Following him up is the Faerie Knight, and that's a tough one to follow, especially since his Sacrificer trait is also for the tower. He provides plus 3 loyalty for Old Faith heroes. The scaling is 1 for every 10 levels. And as I mentioned before, there may be some niche cases where you want to bump the loyalty of your Old Faith heroes that you're bringing to a mission. But even then, I find most people don't even bother to swap them in for that. They'd rather just keep the Relic Dust going. But it does have its uses, and it is a loyalty trait. I think putting it in C tier is a bit harsh, even though its competition is Ector. So I think B is fair. Moving on to Sir Galahad. He has the Miracle Healer trait, which applies in the Hospice. At max level, he will be providing a 6% heal to Vitality for each hero that participated in a mission at the end of the mission. The scaling is plus 1% for every 5 levels. This is definitely useful for preventing downtime. If your heroes only took a little bit of Vitality damage, they come out of the mission completely fine. You don't need to worry about sticking them in the Hospice. It's definitely a useful one. I don't think it's one of the strongest options for the Hospice, but definitely can be helpful. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in B tier. Next is our first Cathedral trait holder, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Lady Guinevere. She has the Tutor trait, and as I mentioned, this works when she's assigned to the Cathedral, providing up to plus 12% mental debuff resist, 1% for every 2 levels. And it's very solid. Having extra mental debuff resist provides you protection against a wide variety of quite annoying status effects such as stun. I think she's probably the best person to place in the Cathedral. Her effect isn't anything crazy, but just by the nature that I think she is overall the best option for it, and mental debuff resist I think is a little bit better than physical, I'm going to put her into A tier. For Sir Kay, he has Bone Setter, and this works in the Hospice. He provides plus 50% HP recovered while resting, 2% per level. This means when you rest at a campfire in the middle of a mission, you can get up to plus 50% extra HP recovered. This is a huge deal, especially on the higher difficulties, hard and very hard, where you only get 25% of your HP back when you rest, I believe. The extra bonus from this is huge. You know, that 25% just isn't enough, but thanks to Sir Kay, maybe you'll get, a good amount more over the course of the mission, and it'll prevent you from taking some vitality damage. I think this is probably the best Hospice trait, though, like I said, he does have some decent competition with maybe like Dindraine, depending on your personal taste, or Galahad as you get later into the game. So because of that, I don't think he breaks into S tier. He lands solidly in A tier. Following him up is a very similar trait, and that's going to be Lanval with Armorsmith. When you assign him to the merchant, you get up to plus 50% armor restored when resting at a campfire within a mission. Scaling is also 2% per level. Pretty much everything I just said for K applies for Lanval, except it's armor instead of HP. Armor is a big deal. It's great for mitigating damage, and with him there, being able to potentially cap out on armor after resting from a campfire versus not, it can definitely make a difference at pretty much all the stages in the campaign. And for the same reasons why I put K in A tier, I'm also going to put Lanval in A tier. Next is Sir Leodegrance. He has the Virtuous trait. This is a round table trait, and it's also a loyalty trait. So everything that I've said for Black Knight and Faerie Knight, it's the same thing for Sir Leo. Now we get to our main character, Sir Mordred. He has the Veteran trait. When you assign him to the training grounds, every hero gains up to 12% of the mission XP to their own XP bars if they did not participate in that mission. The scaling is 1% for every 2 levels. This is just very useful for keeping a lot of your roster sort of on par and on level with your main team that you're bringing to most of your missions, because sometimes someone has to sit out, and it can definitely be a drag to have to bring someone in who's like 3 levels lower. They definitely feel like a bit of a detriment. But thanks to this trait, he can definitely help mitigate that a little bit in combination with the actual functionality of the training ground. This is definitely something you move away from as you get farther into the game, as you don't really need the XP he's providing, and you'd rather get the benefit of something else. So this is just a great case of a B tier trait. Now we have Morgana. She has the Enchanter trait for the Enchanted Tower, fitting, and this hurts because she's one of my favorite characters in the entire game, but she also has one of the worst traits in the entire game as far as facility traits go. She provides up to 2 temporary armor at the start of every mission, which means when you start a mission, you get 2 extra armor. Not at the start of each fight, at the start of every mission. The scaling is 1 for every 10 levels. That's terrible. 2 armor is nothing by the stage of the game you get her in. It's super minimal. The scaling is terrible. And you will absolutely never use her over Ector or even Faerie Knight. And if you do have to resort to using her, you don't even really notice the difference. So, very solid D tier. Next up is Pelleas. He has Drill Master. This is also a Training Grounds trait. It has up to plus 12% physical debuff resist, and the scaling is 1% for every 2 levels. Also, fairly useful, having physical debuff resistance, not quite as strong as mental, I think, as far as what debuffs they sort of fight against. And most of the time, I just prefer to use Mordred over him for that XP. I don't think that this makes a huge difference until it gets to around 10%, which is fairly late in the game. And there's just other training ground traits also that I think are better than him, and you'd rather swap to from Mordred instead of swapping to Pelleas. So I think he goes into C tier. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on him, but I think this is where he's going to go. Next is Percivale. Percivale is going to be joining Morgana down in D tier. He's a really good unit, with a really, really bad facility trait. He has Bolsterer, and it's a cathedral trait. He provides up to 5 temporary HP at the start of a mission. Like Morgana, it's at the start of the mission instead of at the start of each encounter, which I think would make this at least acceptable. The scaling is 1 every 5 levels. They need to either increase that amount it's scaling with for every 5 levels or make the scaling better, but this is just not worth taking. 5 temporary health is nothing on, like, any difficulty, especially since it's going to be a one-time thing. If you use him, it's basically the same as not using him. D tier. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Red Knight, and with his Ruthless trait in the training grounds, he provides up to plus 5% to all hero damage. 1% every 5 levels. That's a huge deal. It's just a flat damage boost to everyone. I mean, what more could you want? Being able to do more damage is a pretty core mechanic to this game, so his ability to boost that by up to 5%, that's great. If you compare this to, like, the Strength passive skill, which costs 2 skill points for 10%, this is essentially, like, half of that, so 1 skill point, I guess, for free. You just assign him to the facility and you get it. It's just great. I don't think it's quite as good as Ector, because his is just phenomenal, but I do think it belongs in S tier. Kind of operating like a pendulum on this, swinging back to the opposite end, we have Tegyr, and he's also going to go in D tier. That is because he also has the Veteran trait, just like Mordred, and it operates the exact same way with the XP bonus. The trait isn't necessarily bad, right? Because it's good on Mordred, but it's completely pointless because you have Mordred, and you can't get rid of him because he's the main character. So either Mordred's going to be in the training ground, or someone else will because you want their trait instead of the XP one. So why would you ever use Tegyr? Because his trait is just completely redundant, even if it's not bad, I guess, it becomes pointless. I don't know why they gave him a duplicate trait that shared with the main character. So, yeah, D tier. Next is going to be the White Knight. He has the Psalm Singer trait when assigned to the Cathedral, and it's another loyalty trait, this time just for Christian heroes. So he goes along with the loyalty gang, and right square in B tier. Lastly is Yvain. He has Coin Counter when assigned to the Merchant. This provides a 6% increase in gold rewards from missions, plus 1% for every 5 levels. This definitely isn't bad. Extra gold is always good. You can kind of combo this with Brunor, but it just feels so little. By the time you get to the end game, sure, 6% can definitely make a difference, but as you're leveling him up early on in the game, 1%, 2%, even 3%, just doesn't feel like it makes a huge difference. And there's just a lot of other heroes that you're going to swap to assign into the Merchant pretty much as soon as you get the opportunity to. Yvain is generally only in there for Act 1 or until you get someone that you like more. I believe that covers it for all of the heroes with facility traits. I tried to double check, go back through my save files. I even went through the wiki to make sure I wasn't missing anyone, and I'm pretty sure I didn't, but if I did, go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I'll just probably respond to you there what tier I'd probably put them in. But pretty sure this is set and done. I'm pretty confident in where I placed everyone. There may be 1 or 2 that I could definitely see moving up or down a tier, but I think this is a solid tier list. If there's anyone that you disagree with, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm always interested to see what other players' perspectives and takes are on the different characters in the game. I do have a couple other tier lists planned after this one, but if there's anything in particular any of you would like to see me cover in a tier list format, you can also let me know in the comments for that too. I'm always open to any ideas or suggestions for what you guys want to see. I am here to try and provide as much helpful content to the community as possible. I think I've rambled enough, so yeah, thanks for watching.